Okay, so 2g says to factor 18x squared minus 50. Okay, 18x squared minus 50. First thing we look for in factoring, remember what it's called?
The greatest common factor.
Yes, good. So what would be a greatest common factor here?
It would be 2.
Good. So take 2 out of this. What would the next line read?
The next line would be 2 bracket.
Yep.
9x minus or squared.
Yeah, squared, definitely.
Minus 25.
Good. And what's key here is, remember what we talked about is the difference of squares.
What's key here is you have to find the square root of 9 and 25. So for 9 it's...
So for 9x squared it's...
3x.
Yep.
And then for 25, or negative 25, it's negative 5. So
it won't be negative, well, plus or negative 5. But don't worry about the negative now, because in a difference of squares, we just have to make sure that it's actually a subtraction.
Right.
Okay, that's what's important. A and B, A and B.
So that's just disregarding this.
Yeah, exactly. Just think of this as the absolute value of the last number. Don't worry about the negative sign there. So once we got those two numbers, what do we deal with here? What do we get?
Oh, right. We do 3x.
So I just write 3x there?
Okay. I think.
Yeah. What about this 2 on the outside? Does that come down?
I forget what we do with it.
It definitely stays. Okay.
Before the,
yeah. Okay. And then what do we do here?
And then it's 3x plus 5 and 3x minus 5.
Good. Exactly. That's the factored form of that. Okay. You just had to remember that this was difference of squares was important. We had to recognize that. Okay. So let's jump to the next question. All right. So the next one we're going to talk about is restrictions. Okay. So again, like we talked about a little earlier, is we think of this as a fraction, right? Because technically it is. And when we have a fraction, no matter what number's on top, if we're dividing by the number 0 on the bottom, when we go to put it in a calculator, so what did we do last time? 8 divided by 0, we got division by 0, or normally you get an error, essentially saying it can't be done. It's a restriction. Okay, so this doesn't work. We can't do this. So in order to figure out what we can't put on the bottom, we're trying to think of the bottom equation. What would make this equal to 0? That's what our restriction is essentially going to be. So we take the bottom of our equation here. This is x plus 1. And we set it equal to 0. That's the important part. So we get x plus 1 equals 0. So our restriction is x is equal to, in this case, what is x equal to?
Negative.
Yeah. Or we wouldn't say x is equal to it, because for our restriction we would say x cannot be equal to negative 1. Okay. So here we solve what it is.
Write 0 cannot be equal to 0.
Okay. So let's talk about this. Yeah. If I plug in the number 0 here, what is 0 plus 1? Yeah. So is the bottom of my fraction going to be 0? So it wouldn't be a restriction, right? But if I plug in negative 1 for x, negative 1 plus 1 gets me my 0. Can no longer do this, right? Now, when you get larger equations on the bottom, it is important to factor the top and the bottom. In this case, because we only had a very simple one on the bottom, we didn't really have to worry about factoring the top. But normally we would also factor the top of an equation also. Okay? So what we'll do is a more complex question, show you how to simplify it.
Okay.
So like we're saying, it is important to normally factor the top, so maybe they wanted to also simplify this equation. Okay?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Listen.
Okay, so fix the page. So like we said, it's important to factor the top. So what I'm going to do now is focus on the top of this. 2x squared minus x minus 3. So we take that. A lot of times they'll want you to simplify. So this will be part of simplifying it. We find the factors of this. Same idea as when we do factoring. So find the factors of our first term, which would be 2x and 1x. Factors of 3 are 1 and 3. What do they got to add up to?
They have to add to negative
1.
Good.
So let's see if we can do this. 2x times 1, 1x times 3 gives us 2x and 3x. Will this work?
Yes.
If what?
If 3 is negative.
Perfect. So let's put this up. 2x and 3x. We add them together. If 3 is negative, it will work. So that means this 3 would have to be negative.
Mhm.
How do we do our check? What's negative 3 times positive 1?
What?
What's negative 3 times positive 1? Which is exactly what we have here. So that's how we check, right?
Okay.
So once we've done that, we go to put it into our brackets.
Mhm.
So 2x goes into 1, 1x in the other. Now, this is the tough part. What do we do with these other terms here?
You have to switch them.
Yeah.
So 2x minus 3.
Good, that's right. The minus 3 has to go in the opposite bracket of the 1x. And so what goes in the opposite bracket of the 2x?
You mean the plus 1?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what I meant.
I don't really confused.
Okay. So the simplified version of this is actually a good one to write down.
Yeah.
So when we do this, 2x minus 3, x plus 1, right? Over x plus 1, okay? What actually happens here is, think of this when you're simplifying fractions again. Say I had 2 times 5 divided by 5. Well, instead of actually working this out, I can just cancel my 5's out. They're the same term, and I know it's going to be 2. What happens here, so I have x plus 1 and x plus 1. Well, they cancel each other out. The simplified version of this would just be 2x minus 3, right? Now, when simplifying, this is important, okay? When simplifying, you know how we drop these off? That doesn't mean once it's in factor form, we don't use it as a restriction. There is still a restriction of negative 1.
Mm-hmm.
So when finding restrictions, it's best to actually factor everything first,
Mm-hmm.
okay? On the bottom, don't cross anything out.
Oh.
Use this bottom here. We figured out that the restriction was negative 1, and then simplify the question.
So
Okay.
for this restriction, you're basically only looking at the denominator, you're not
Yeah.
looking at the top at all.
Yeah, not until we simplify after. Okay. All right, 3b.
Okay.
So we're going to factor this. We know we got to find the factors at the bottom, just because, like we said before, we don't want the bottom to be 0. But again, we said we want to simplify the top. Anything special about the top? Any type of factoring we did previously that would deal with this? Is there a subtraction sign in between? Okay, so that can be called a difference also. Can I find the square root of x squared?
Yeah.
What would it be? Square root of x squared?
Minus x.
Yeah, right, because x times x is x squared. Can I find the square root of 9? Yeah. So what's the top?
It's x minus 3.
Yeah, close.
Oh.
What's the name of it? It's called a difference.
Of squares.
Yeah, okay, that's what it's
I didn't
difference.
recognize that at all.
So again, remember I told you that's something we got to recognize in terms of factoring. We're definitely going to throw it in there. So let's split this up. We'll do the top, and we'll do the bottom on the right, top on the left.
Mhm.
So x squared minus 9. What do we have to do in order to factor this?
Find difference of square.
Yeah. So when it's in factor form, we're definitely going to have 2 brackets. What's the square root of x squared?
X.
Yep. Square root of 9.
I'm sorry, 3.
Okay. So what do I fill in the brackets with?
X plus 3 and then x minus 3.
Good. Done. Okay. Now let's do this one on the right. X squared minus 2x minus 15. So what do I do first?
You find the factors of x, so
Which
1
are-
and 1.
Yep.
And then, so 1x and x. And then factors of 15, 1 and 15, and 3 and 5.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere around.
Then what do they got to do?
They have to add up to negative 2.
Good. Alright.
So
So what pairing would we use?
the 3 and the 5.
Yeah, that's right. 1x times 3, 1x times 5. X gave us 3x and 5x. How do I make that negative 2?
Was it 5x?
Well, 1x times 5
so
would be
5.
5x. Yeah. Sorry. Tactically, the middle term, as I keep writing, is negative 2x, right? That's why 3x and 5x. How do I make them add up to negative 2x?
Negative 5.
Negative 5. Which means this number here has to be negative. What's negative 5 times 3?
Negative 15.
So that means we know it works.
Yes.
Okay, so that's part of our check. So when we go to put it into brackets, what do we get?
Okay, 1x plus 3.
Yeah.
1x minus 5.
Are you sure you put them in the right brackets?
Yeah.
Why?
Because they're the same.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter, right? Okay, so the left, this was our left, was the top, and our right one, put a line down the middle, that was the bottom. So we're going to go to simplify this equation. Okay, so the new simplified version is x plus 3, x minus 3. Remember, it's now divided by what we found our other factored form, which was x plus 3, x minus 5. Okay. Now, we know we can simplify this. What can I do to simplify this?
Oh, cross out the first two.
Yeah, x3 and x3.
Yes.
But what do I need to do before I simplify?
Find restrictions.
Yes. So, well, am I going to find restrictions with the bottom here? Or the top? Which one do I use? Bottom or top?
Well, the bottom.
Okay.
I guess x can't be 5.
Okay, let's set them up as equations. You're right. You're jumping ahead. So how do I set it up as an equation? X.
Oh, right. X equals
X minus 5 equals.
x plus 3.
What are we trying to make? Think of this like it's a multiplication, right?
Oh,
So I got
sorry,
two
0?
numbers. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
right,
Can equals
sorry.
0 when it's set up. Okay. And what would the other one be? The other equation?
X plus 3 equals 0.
Yeah, good. Okay. So, what's one of the restrictions? X cannot be
5.
and X cannot be.
-3.
Good. So we have our two restrictions.
Yes.
X cannot be -3 and 5. Okay, so we've done that part, and now we can simplify. So what do we cross out?
The first two brackets in the bottom.
So what are we left with?
X minus 3 over x minus 5.
Good. That's it. So there's our simplified version, plus we have our restrictions. Okay.
Restrictions